This week on Quality Digest Live, we connect the dots between old dogs, engineers, and Rubik's Cubes.
Plus, the benefits of paying attention. That and more when we come back. Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for September 19th, 2014. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme. If the show looks or sounds a little different today, that's because not all of our equipment made it back from IMTS show in Chicago. So we're working with Plan B. Somehow,
actually, this is Plan A.
this is Plan A. You're right.
Plan B was to have the TriCaster.
Right.
Yeah.
Somehow somebody misplaced a 30-inch by 30-inch by 110-pound box coming back from IMTS. So
shipper to be named later.
Shipper to be named later. Yes. Okay. All right, first story. There are, if you think about it, really two main methods for making cars more fuel efficient. You make more efficient engines, which is a lot of automakers have been doing that, or you decrease the weight of the car. The problem with the latter is, at least in the United States, is we want our cars to be big enough to haul our families around, to haul our toys around, and have all the bells and whistles, which usually translates to larger, not smaller cars. So the question is, how do you let Americans have the size cars that they want and still make them more fuel efficient? If you can't make them smaller, well, use lighter weight materials. And that's the goal of the NIST's Center for Automotive Lightweighting, or NCAL. So to meet the proposed federal fuel efficiency standards, and some of you may know what these are, it's 54.5 miles per gallon by 2025, and I believe that's per fleet. So each automaker across their entire fleet, I believe that has to be their average, is 54.5 miles per gallon by 2025. That's nearly double of what today's standard is. So the industry is trimming weight from its vehicles, largely by substituting newer, lighter materials, and also kind of working on vehicle redesign as well that will also lead to lighter weight. So think of this, a 10% reduction in mass translates into an estimated fuel savings of about 6 to 7%. And this fuel efficiency isn't just because you make some components lighter. Let's say, we've all seen cars using more plastic and so forth, and obviously that makes the car lighter. But there are also some knock-on effects. If you were to just trim the body weight, and you kept the engine the same size, well, your mass to power ratio would be higher, so actually you would have a more powerful car. But if you scale down everything else in relationship to the weight, you end up getting a car which looks and feels about the same as what you've had before, has the same driving characteristics, and has better gas mileage, right? So the knock-on effects. And by the way, trimming body weight accounts for about 1/4 of the car's mass. But the other things that you get through reducing the body weight is you can use smaller engines. Now remember what I just said, is you have the mass of the car is decreased, so you can decrease the size of the engine and some other things, and the car will perform the same as what it did when it weighed more and had a bigger engine, right? So you can use a smaller engine, or if we're talking electric cars, fewer batteries, smaller batteries. You can reduce the weight of the suspension. The suspension doesn't have to hold up as much weight, so you can decrease the suspension. You can decrease the braking system, how heavy duty the braking system is. You can go to lighter weight tires and other components actually related to the suspension. You can, a lighter weight car also decreases the energy required to speed up or slow down, and also there's less energy required just actually to maintain a steady speed. So once you start decreasing the rate, a lot of other components come into place, and all of this kind of reduces the total overall weight of the car while still maintaining the performance that we would expect. So the automakers are already doing this. Where NCAL comes in is to provide information on the new materials that automakers are turning to. As they transition to these new types of materials, we're talking new steel composites, aluminum, magnesium composites, and other lightweight options, plastics and so forth. Automakers and auto suppliers are all looking at these, and what they're really interested in, the manufacturers, is how you manufacture using these new materials. It's not as simple as, oh, we're going to use magnesium instead of aluminum. Well, magnesium machines differently. It's a different type of material. And the automakers need to understand how these materials can be manufactured. So the center is supplying information that helps guide design decisions that will affect the performance, durability, and actually also the crashworthiness of future cars and trucks. So this NIST Research Center, NCAL, what it really specializes in is measuring how the new materials are strained in response to some of the forming operations that might go into the shaping of materials for hoods or fenders or door panels or floor pans and other parts. It also studies how the new material will hold up in collisions, which is also strongly influenced by material type and in part shape. So in all, what we're looking at here is you've got these new materials, and what the automotive manufacturers don't necessarily know or understand is when you start forming these materials, how are they going to respond? If you're bending materials, how much do they bend back if you're forming them that way? Or how well do they machine? Or do they machine differently? Or are there other characteristics we need to know about when we're machining them? That way, it gives them a kind of a head start on using these materials, so they're not having to do all the experimentation themselves. NIST is providing them some of this information, so they kind of a head start when they get ready to start working with these new materials. So work being done by NIST. So all of this, again, leading just to more fuel-efficient cars by 2025, 50 miles per gallon. And without sacrificing, by the way, and this is the main thing automakers are always looking at, U.S. buyers do not want to sacrifice the features that they already have in the vehicle.
Sure. I mean, if any of you all, I think if many of us have traveled, if you've gone to Europe or Asia, you can tell the difference in cars. We like big cars here.
We like big cars.
No doubt about it. And the other thing that I note about your story is that, 54.5 miles per gallon as the standard by 2025, which is double what it is now, which would make it about 25, 27 right now.
Right.
That as well is a huge increase over what it was 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, heck yeah.
I mean, this has been a continuum of effort here, and the intensification of this now is because of global warming, carbon footprint, all that kind of stuff. And also, I think it's interesting. The most interesting thing about this is this idea that NIST is helping. NIST is out there to help manufacturers. There was a time in the not so distant past where manufacturers, auto manufacturers in particular, were kind of on their own. There was knowledge you would acquire through the course of doing your business and that you'd inherit from one generation of manufacturers and engineers to the next, but there wasn't really a lot of sharing of information. And this is what we're seeing that's different now, is that the information is shared, it's available. NIST realizes as a part of the government that this is really in the interest of the government of the country to do this better.
Basically helping the automotive manufacturers meet the standard.
And give them the tools to do that, and I think that's a great story. And NIST is also in the news this week as well, and it really kind of is a continuum here, because this is what NIST does. NIST really is in the news this week because they are announcing the site visits for the finalists of the 2014 Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. Of course, all of us know the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award is the United States' highest award for performance excellence. And again, what NIST does is, through things like the training center that we talked about in the last story, and through the Baldrige, is they kind of curate and collate information, they share it, they benchmark it across industries. And I think it's really important that NIST is taking the lead in that through the Baldrige in doing this. But there's an interesting thing as it touches on manufacturing, which I'm going to get to here in a moment in the story. First of all, 9 U.S. organizations have reached the site visit stage of the Baldrige Award process. And although the names of those organizations weren't released in the story, we do know that 6 of them are in healthcare,
Wow.
2 are nonprofits, and 1 is a service business.
No manufacturers.
And it is notable, exactly what I just referred to is notable, that there's no manufacturers included on the short list of finalists. And this is a notable trend which we've seen in development here with Baldrige for several years. And Dirk, you and I have kind of talked about a little bit this morning before the show began. Why is that, and what's the reason for this? And one thing that we kind of proposed or thought about maybe is that manufacturers have been in the excellence business for a long time. Lean and performance excellence, quality are all things that manufacturers know about. Maybe a lot of the low-hanging fruit has been squeezed out of that, has been acquired already. Maybe that those manufacturers aren't pursuing a Baldrige because it's kind of maybe somewhat understood already, the importance of that, as opposed to industries like healthcare, which we're seeing a huge increase in people applying for Baldrige awards in healthcare, where maybe it's not as well understood. It's not as much part of the DNA to approach quality from that perspective. So those are the organizations that are coming to Baldrige really excited and are applying for Baldrige Awards and getting Baldrige Awards.
Yeah, I think another thing that may be going on is most companies in the United States, or I would say most, I'm assuming it's most, are somehow involved in ISO 9001 or other quality management systems, of which Baldrige can work hand in hand with these standards. But I think if you are diligently pursuing those standards, you're kind of already addressing a lot of main issues that are in Baldrige already. The thing is, Baldrige Award, it's actually kind of relatively expensive. If you're going to go for the award itself, it's relatively expensive to go after. It requires a fair, probably more of a in my mind, more of a concerted effort than, let's say, maybe ISO 9001 does. There might be people that might disagree with that, but I think for manufacturers, they're so ingrained with the quality management system process, whether it's ISO 9001 or something else, that this just makes sense for them to go that direction, and maybe not so much the Baldrige as it has been. Maybe part of it's the low-hanging fruit. I also think that in healthcare, Baldrige is really a buzzword in healthcare right now. I mean, everybody is. You talk to any healthcare organization, if they aren't pursuing the Baldrige, they definitely know what it is. It is on their radar. So I think there's a lot of activity going on there with it.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And just to back up, I mean, the site visit, of course, is an important step on the road to winning a Baldrige. Judges go to the Gemba, I guess you could say in this case, and they clarify questions that they have and verify details from the applications of the organizations that they're visiting. So these site visits are starting next month in October, and the names of this year's winning organizations are going to be revealed in late November. Those selected to receive Baldrige Awards will be honored at a ceremony during the Baldrige's Quest for Excellence Conference in Baltimore, Maryland, which is coming up next April. So for more information on this news item, as well as all the other pieces that Dirk and I are covering on today's show, as always, check out the story links just below that video player screen right down there.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, well, Dirk, we're going to turn now to our feature articles. We spent a lot of time on those news items. They were kind of meaty news items, but we're going to talk about our feature articles this week. And the first one is a story that we wrote ourselves internally here in the editorial department of QD. Old dogs, engineers, and Rubik's cubes.
I'm two of those.
That's that. You're kind of all three of them. You're a puzzle as it is as well. But Old Dogs, Engineers, and Rubik's Cubes is the name of an article penned by the QD editorial team as a group, and it appeared in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. The article talks about ThomasNet. I think many of us know about ThomasNet.
A lot of people use it. Yep.
The venerable media company that started as a printed Thomas register more than 100 years ago, 1898.
Used it many times.
Yes, that's right. The initial register, again going back more than 100 years, that offered comprehensive sourcing information and specs for thousands of industrial products and services. It was an indispensable guide for managers and workers at factories, farms, and shops across the land for decades, many, many, many decades, still is. But the industrial landscape of today is quite different, of course, from that of the early 20th century, and the old Thomas Register is radically different as well. ThomasNet today is a cloud-based new media enterprise that offers CAD models, a customized quoting service, a sortable database of vendors with specific certifications and or registrations, and a lot more. And it's all free for users. Sure. And this is the model that I think we're seeing. In media, we know it ourselves. The moral of the story is that media, like all services supporting industry, manufacturing in particular, must continue to evolve to serve customers better. And Dirk, we're a good example of that too.
Sure.
Thomas Register, Quality Digest, monthly printed magazine, in some ways are analogous. They were kind of legacy media that did a certain thing really well for that age, for that time, where you present kind of static information in a printed format, you mail it out, and people would get that information on a regular basis, and they reply. But customers, and we found this, customers these days need quicker access to information, and they need to be able to get in touch with people when they need it, not necessarily through a printed register, although those are still used many times, but through the internet. I mean, that's how everybody uses media now is through a device or through a laptop or through a desktop. So all of us in the world of media are stepping away from, many of us are stepping away from our legacy positions, and we're doing things that are instantaneous. I mean, live broadcasting like the show you're watching right now on Friday, September 19th at 2:15 p.m. on the East Coast. I mean, these types of shows, these types of things enable you, the user, to get much more of an instantaneous connection, and ThomasNet's doing that too. ThomasNet is, through their cloud-based service, is offering much more interactivity. I always talk about the history of media as being a very clear delineation between consumers of media and producers of media, and that's not the case now. Everybody's kind of both a producer of media and a consumer of media at once. Sure. And what ThomasNet is doing is it's allowing those people to all have conversations, and we're doing that too. And from both sides of the equation, whether you're looking for something, whether you're trying to support somebody looking for something, whether you're just trying to give information, whether you're trying to share information, or just share a story that maybe somebody somewhere in the world at that time maybe needs. That's the goal for all of us that are in media trying to serve industry. And I think that's really the end game. We saw last week in IMTS, Dirk, both you and I saw last week in IMTS, that leading manufacturers and companies that serve them need to live at the cutting edge of discomfort, and that's really what it is. I know from working in Quality Digest has gone through a lot of innovations and change. It's stressful. You need to be cognizant of the fact that change, like the one that we've gone through, or the one that ThomasNet has gone through, is not always comfortable. But it is what the reality is in media and in industry today. There's a dynamism that comes from that, and you serve customers better. Just as an aside, before we get off the story, because I know you have a story you want to cover as well in depth. I read an article in The Economist this week about China and Chinese manufacturing management techniques, which have been not really that closely paid attention to in recent years. We talk about Japan all the time and American approaches to manufacturing and to management. But the Chinese have taken a very dynamic approach to management for manufacturing in particular. Very innovative, very much getting stuff out very quick, getting feedback quick, tweaking stuff on the fly, and improving very, very, very quickly, much more quickly in terms of cycle time than many American, European, and Japanese companies do. So this is all part of the same mix, this idea that in this world we're in now, you've got to respond really, really, really quickly. You've got to not be afraid to put stuff out there, get feedback, change it on the fly. The generations of stuff, whatever that is, hardware, software, services, flip so much quicker now than it ever did before. And it's going to continue to do that. Again, I think we're an example of that to a certain extent. ThomasNet certainly is, and all of industry is dealing with the same issue of how do we get the information quicker, how do we change faster, how do we innovate faster and get better in a faster way.
Well, I think there's one other aspect I want to touch on real quick on that article is they did something really right. I did several things right, but one thing that I think they really did right is during kind of the whole design phase and how's ThomasNet going to work, ThomasNet is typically used by people who are looking for parts. And very often these are engineering type people. So the functionality of ThomasNet was designed by engineers, electronic engineers, design engineers, mechanical engineers, and so forth, because they understand the product or the products very often that ThomasNet is trying to sell. But they also understand maybe the questions that people don't know how to ask. You know how sometimes when you Ryan gave me this example this morning, sometimes you want to Google something and you don't know quite the right search term, and, and finally you hit on the right search term and all your results come up. What ThomasNet did is, by having their own engineers with a varied background design the site, those engineers kind of know the questions that maybe somebody's trying to ask, but they don't know quite the right terminology. And so the search functionality of ThomasNet maybe is kind of analogous to Google's. It kind of intuits what you're looking for. I'm not going to put it on the level of Google, but that's the goal, right? Is the idea that you may not know quite what you're looking for, but it's intuitive enough for you to kind of hone in on the parts you're looking for. And that really is a function of knowing your audience and making sure that your design team understands who the audience is, and making sure you design a website that actually accomplishes that goal. And I think not every website or not every design website or anything really takes into account what is the customer going to use this product for, how are they going to use the product.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
Thomason has done a very, very good job of that. Thanks, Rick.
Another article this week that got me thinking was one by Jim Benson called Estimation Requires Attention. And in it, Benson is talking about the use or maybe the misuse of sprint boards or scrum boards as they're called, which is really just if you're not familiar with them, it's just another form of visual technique for tracking projects. In general, what he points out in this, he's got kind of an interesting little story, but what he's pointing out is that sometimes we can get so focused on a particular metric or a particular aspect of our program, whether it's Scrum or Lean or Six Sigma or ISO 9000, we get so focused on some particular aspect of it that we lose sight of how we are really doing or what we are really doing. And I think this applies to a lot of techniques, a lot of programs really, that we deal with as quality professionals. I mean, if you think of it, think of your Lean program or your ISO 9000, and how often do you get focused on some particular measurement? We've got to make sure that we hit this measurement, cycle time. Or we've got to make sure that our documentation for our ISO 9000 is right in line. You kind of obsess on it and you get focused on it, and you sometimes lose complete sight of, wait a minute, what is my goal? What is it I'm actually trying to accomplish? And is my obsession on this particular aspect of ISO 9000 or Lean or Six Sigma or Scrum, is my focus on that one particular aspect of that out of touch with really what I'm trying to do?
Yeah.
Sometimes it will be, sometimes it won't. Sometimes metrics are really important and you've got to pound on them because they really are critical. But I think a lot of times, and we see this a lot in ISO 9001, is you see people just get really obsessed on how am I doing my documentation, and it's like, well, wait a minute, as we've said many times here, the documentation can actually be pretty straightforward. What are you trying to accomplish with it? What does ISO expect from it? Stand back, take a look at it. Same thing applies to a lot of programs, I think.
It's interesting is it's a function, I think, of the personality type that gets into this type of work. Those of us that have been in quality, those of you out there have been in quality for a lot longer than I, know that to do it well, you really need that intensive focus. And I think that tends to get outside the bounds of the project where you say, okay, we're going to focus on this as part of a larger thing. You say, okay, we're going to focus on this. That's all you hear.
Right.
It's management's job to interface with the quality people, professionals in the organization, to direct that, to say, okay, yeah, we need to focus on that as part of a larger thing. And I think that communicating the strategic aspect of why you're doing something is owned by management, should be owned by management. And many times, that's kind of offloaded a little bit further down the line, and that's where you get caught in this. Now what Jim Benson is saying, and a lot of professionals in the visual space are saying, is what you're saying. Step back, look at the entire thing, look at your sprint board, look at your Kanban board, and think about what it is that you're trying to accomplish in totality.
Right.
How these little projects fit into it. Visuality is really, that's what it's about, is stepping back and really seeing what's happening, what you're really doing, and how you can improve it from there, right? I think that's really the bigger, broader picture here.
Right.
And like you say, it's with anything. I mean, it's not just with Lean. I mean, it's with ISO. We see it a lot with ISO, right?
Yeah.
See it a lot with Six Sigma. I think we see it maybe even with Baldrige. I mean, we talked about Baldrige earlier, where people get focused on the site visiting, get focused on the application, maybe, and they don't keep an eye on the fact that this is really why you're doing it, is to improve your organization overall.
Right, and particularly if you're doing something like, well, let's go back to ISO or Baldrige, is kind of like, I'm trying to get a registration, or I'm trying to win an award. No, that's not really what you're trying to do. You're trying to improve your organization. Getting registered to ISO 9001 or getting a Baldrige award, that's kind of the prize at the end, but that's not what your goal is. And I think that gets lost by a lot. And I tell you, we know a lot of ISO 9001 auditors. They'll tell you the same thing, is kind of like, these people get so tied up, and it's kind of like, I got to get this registration, No, do the job. Do, work at the framework, whether it's Baldrige or ISO, whatever, work at the framework with a eye toward what you're trying to accomplish, which is to, continuous improvement, quality, so on and so forth. That's your goal. And if you do that right, the other things are going to fall into place. I mean, that's...
Do you agree with me, though, that that's management's role to really direct that thing?
Yeah, well, I do. I think management needs to be the one that takes the big picture, and because I think, basically is what happens. Management gives somebody a task. Look, this is your task, and here's your little milepost. Yeah. So then, everybody gets focused on, okay, here's my milepost. I got to hit this milepost. Sometimes the manager. And sometimes it's the manager's fault. I think they put too much emphasis on it. But it's their job to come back and say, okay, wait a minute, guys. Okay, look, you're doing really good, but let's back off a little bit. Let's move on to the next step.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, quickly getting towards the end of our show. It's been a quick 25 minutes so far, but I did want to make a brief mention of an article that we ran this week from Edna Falkenberg of To Suit America titled Avoiding Common CAPA Pitfalls. And this piece ran in yesterday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. Corrective and preventive action, of course, is a bedrock discipline of any successful quality program, especially within highly regulated environments. This article gives you a really good overview of why CAPA is important and how it helps organizations achieve business objectives. So we encourage you to read the article yourself and for more details about this. And if you want to find that even more, you'll be interested to know that Edna will be presenting a webinar on this topic, moderated by our very own Dirk Ducharme, this coming Tuesday, September 23rd at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. So to register for the event, keep an eye on your email. We're going to be sending out email blasts. A lot of you have registered already. There's been a lot of interest in this one. So check it out. We'll be emailing you on Monday. We also have it listed in our event calendar, which you all should check out. Our event calendar is updated regularly.
Go on our website, top menu bar, right-hand side, it says
Event calendar. There you go. Under the resources, right?
No. Actually, it's online by itself.
Yep. We did put that there, and it's also in Quality Digest Daily as a link out to our event calendar. So check that out, and make sure you check out the webinar. Again, it's this Tuesday coming up, the 23rd, at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time.
Yeah. And finally, before we go today, we were really sorry to hear about the death of PQ Systems founder and president, Michael J. Cleary, who died suddenly on September 10th. Cleary, along with being founder and president of PQ Systems, was a professor emeritus at Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio, a noted authority in the field of quality management, and a charter member of the education division of the American Society for Quality Control, as it was called then. It's now the ASQ. He was also a past columnist for Quality Digest, writing a series of very clever articles and stories that illustrated the usage of various statistical techniques, which you can find both on our site and on the PQ Systems website. What Cleary did, he would come up with these horrendous puns for people's names. I can't even think of some of them right now, but he would have these puns, and he'd create these stories with these characters who had these really I am confused or something.
Yeah, I am wrong.
I am wrong. Basically, he had this method of communicate statistical concepts in just a very friendly, humorous manner that he just made his articles really well read. And like I said, he wrote for us for a couple years, and actually those same many new ones as well are on the PQ Systems website. I think it's pqsystems.com, I believe, right? So if you knew Mike and want to send condolences to his family or to the folks at PQ Systems, they certainly would appreciate it. And you can follow the link below the player page to his obituary on our website. And at the bottom of that is more information on how to send your condolences to either Mike's family or to PQ Systems. So sorry to see him go.
Yeah, Mike, you'll be missed.
Nice man.
Definitely nice man. Definitely contributed a lot to our industry and to Quality Digest. So
Absolutely.
You will be missed. Okay. Well, that's our show for this week. Thank you all for joining us. And we'll be back at you next week with another week of Quality Digest Daily starting on Monday. And of course, we'll be back here on next Friday, the 26th. For Quality Digest Live.
And maybe we'll have some equipment.
Well, we may have some equipment back by then, but hopefully we will continue to move forward with Quality Digest Daily and Quality Digest Live. So thank you all for joining us. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
So long. Bye.